Elizabeth, thank you very much for your time here on ENCA. Of course, there are about 30,000 Americans living in South Africa. How important is it that they cast their ballots to basically help, for instance, the Democrats?
Hi, Ms. Dehla. Thanks for having me. Honestly, I think this is the election of our lifetime, and it's incredibly important for every American and every American overseas to cast their ballots. This is indeed a battle for the soul of our nation, and we really are encouraging all Americans to get out the vote, to encourage others to vote, and to get their votes in as early as possible.
How will this work? If you could just explain to us, how will it work in terms of ballot papers? Will they be arriving here and sent to different addresses, or do people have to order the papers to come to their homes or work?
Yes, you do have to order them ahead of time. You need to apply every election year for an absentee ballot for overseas voters. And actually, they were flying all around Joburg, all around South Africa yesterday. It was quite fun. They're primarily flying around by email, but every state has different rules and timeframes and processes for completing and returning the application, well, the applications and the actual ballots themselves. So also just this year to make sure that we don't wait into the last minute and people run into problems, because there have been problems even in the past few days. We really are encouraging everybody to do that early. About half of the states now allow for electronic submission of ballots, but the other half still require what they're calling postal delivery. In the past, many of us have used the U.S. consulates, and that is still an option this year. We can drop them off at the consulates on specific days within specific hours in Joburg, Cape Town, or Durban. They have to be in prepaid postage envelopes, prepaid postage envelopes. But what they do is they send them to the U.S., and then it goes into the Postal Service from the U.S. And this year, we know that there's also been attack on the U.S. Postal Service, and because of COVID, all of the time frames are, everything is not as usual. So we don't want to take a lot of risks. That's why we're encouraging people to do it as soon as possible. And to be honest, in South Africa and other countries, we're really encouraging people, if they need to use the postal delivery, to actually use a courier instead.
Mm-hmm. Now, your reaction, of course, to the death of Ginsburg and, how, if President Trump is able to actually get her replacement before election, how's that going to affect things?
Honestly, it's a devastating loss in so many different ways. She's just such an incredible, inspiring woman, and actually encourage everybody to look at the documentaries and the film about her life, because most of us growing up didn't know about her. And she really is just such an amazing hero for all women, but for everybody. And I think that that's universal, such an inspiration. So yes, that was horrible news to wake up to yesterday on ballot day, which is 45 days before the election. So today's 44 days till the election. It is heating up every day. We don't think this can get any more difficult and more challenging, but it is definitely going to be a contentious couple of months here. And we can see that President Trump and Mitch McConnell are really going to try to push this through. It will come down to a few senators, and we'll have to see how they decide whether to proceed on this or not before the election.
Well, thank you very much.
It's inspired and galvanized a whole lot more of us as well, and hopefully more Americans in the U.S. and overseas will vote. I think one of the things to point out is that only about 7% of the eligible voters overseas, which we think are about 6.5 million voters, American voters living overseas, only about 7% of them actually voted in the 2016 election. So if we could, and that election we know was so close, if we could just really motivate people in South Africa, Americans in South Africa, across the continent and across the world to vote, we can swing this election. There are ways to do this. I think overseas voters seem to be more and more progressive these days in these years. And it's a vote that we can count on and we can influence. And every absentee ballot is counted. The myth that they are.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That's Elizabeth O'Leary from the Democrats Abroad, South Africa.